He's like, I thought more people died than the 5,200. And we've lost 190,000 from COVID-19. And I was like, I think it's the psychological component of it too. It was dramatic. It was psychological. I was driving back home from downtown Atlanta as fast as I could on the highway because it was sort of like this feeling of like we were.
It's a panic and where are they going to hit next? Like, and you were downtown and I thought, oh my gosh, Atlanta is a huge city. And at that time they were speculating terrorism, but they were very careful not to use that word. Because I was watching the Today Show as I was taking a shower and getting ready to go into Emory. And all of that happened, and it was trying to get. And this is before cell phones, right? Because I couldn't reach you.
Yeah,
we didn't have cell phones, and so it was.
I don't even know if we had the flip phones at that point.
Maybe those.
Yeah, we had those. No texting though, really.
But certainly a day of remembering, and I think there's not a better day to talk about this topic. Like we're talking about how to bounce forward after setback, and so many people that endured just the most tragic thing I think you could ever think about going through, and have rebuilt their lives and reset everything. I think is a pretty good day to talk about this.
Yeah, so lots of things have been happening with the Big Self School. We are excited about our book releases. We're excited about bringing you a guest once a week on the Big Self podcast, as well as doing this live show where, by the way, you need to time us out there. We are going to try to hit you with 5 things each and every week in 30 minutes or less. It's the gauntlet has been thrown. The challenge is there, and we're here to entertain you as well as educate you.
You can entertain. I'm not that funny, as I've been told time and time again.
Really?
I try to be.
Okay.
And I'm a little long-winded, so this isn't going to be a challenge for me.
That's right. Yep. So, but here at the Big Self School, what are we trying to do? But we're trying to bring you meaningful content, really on a regular basis. And by the way, let me just give one more shout out to this because I'm really proud of this project. I just really began a release of a podcast called Who Do You Think You Are? It is now everywhere podcasts are available, and it is a daily, and it comes out at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. A book suggestion and a meditation question packed into about 3 or 4 minutes,
and
each and every day.
And the sexy voice of Chad Prevost.
Okay, I don't know. Now I'm feeling a little uncomfortable.
I kind of love it.
Oh, well, good. That's you got to live with it.
I want to say hi to Aaron. He just popped into our Facebook.
Hey Aaron, shout out, man.
You? Good to have you here.
Yeah. All right. So our starting question is, what are the top 5 ways that people get stuck after failing? But of course, we want to make this a positive thing too, not just the negative. So we want to say, and how can we turn that problem inside out?
Yeah. And I want to set the table a little bit here too. So we talked about 9/11 and all the national and personal resiliency that a lot of people demonstrated. But now we're in this crazy COVID time, and all the repercussions that are happening, the implications of that. And so, this is another great time to talk about this because so many people are affected. Like jobs are lost, jobs are being, just set back, and people are on furlough. People are having to balance and juggle.
Students are struggling.
Parenting and schools, and
millions of people are out of work. I heard a statistic today that young adults between the ages of 18 and 25, like half of them are living with their parents again. Like it's and we know that the mental health issues that people face anyway are certainly exacerbated by these kind of untold levels of isolation, loneliness. There's so much anxiety and stress. And so we really wanted to tackle this topic in as quick of a way
as we can. Hey, Amanda, I see you popped in too. Good to see you.
Yeah, shout out Amanda. Failure is, okay. So there's a lot of trite things that are frequently, we hear a whole lot. Like, it's almost like this belief system that, like, yeah, you got to fail fast, man. You got to fail. Yeah, failure is how you really learn, And well, look, in the end, though.
Do they sound like that?
I guess those are those techie.
That sounds like Bill
geeks,
and Ted.
You got to fail fast.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
But you hear a lot of that mantra, and it makes, to me, it minimizes failure. Failure is real, and failure is a failure, and it does scar you sometimes. It does make you feel jaded sometimes. It does hurt, and it is a setback. It's not a set forward, right? So the thing is, though, failure, and this is what it's a mindset, and it is, you could, if you get stuck after a failure, well, then that is a failure, and that's the end of that part of the story. But there's a way to use it in a learning kind of way. And some of these things, look, Shelly and I, we're speaking to ourselves in some of these things too. It's easy to fall into some of the traps. So let's see, number one, what would you say number one top five of the top 5 habits is someone gets stuck here?
Denying your responsibility or your role in what happened. And we can talk a lot about this. I think, what I want to say to set this up are setbacks and failures and fallings that we are partly responsible for. And then there are some things, of course, that happen to us, like a terrorist attack, like a pandemic, like an illness, things that we don't, I think we can decide how to respond to them, but I think we have to be really careful about this one we're talking about, because there are some things that we cannot control, but we can certainly still bounce forward from them. So what did you want to talk about with that one?
Well, I think that there is this thing, I think the term is called inattentional blindness. And, sometimes we can over focus on like what we did well and like really have, speaking of it's self-awareness September still, we can have blind spots to the things that we're really not doing so well. Like if, say between, a relationship, say our partner bragged on us for something that we did right. And we were just like, things just must be so good. We're just doing great because, she said blank about me, how good I cooked or something on Thursday. But there's other things that maybe, she's been trying to call your attention to that you could have been listening to, and things aren't just all lovely in paradise. It's called inattentional blindness, and there's actually a famous illustration about this. You might have heard about this, where I think it's on YouTube, where they asked an audience to focus on the dribbling and passing of these basketball players and to count how many times they dribbled and passed. And they did it for 60 seconds. And for 9 of those seconds, a girl dressed up in a gorilla suit walked out in front of everyone, did some motions and stuff, and then walked off. And like half or a large portion of the audience had no idea. They completely missed the gorilla because they were so focused on their counting task. And so there's inattentional blindness in terms of our role. Go ahead.
Well, and this, for those of you all that know my story with my startup and burnout and kind of the spectacular failure of that experience, and when I was in it, and even coming out of that and like really looking back on what happened, like what just happened, and how do we recalibrate here? And I see a lot of people get stuck in this place of, we defend. We don't want to believe that we did something or we were a part of that process or that dynamic. And this goes back to that self-confrontation we talked about last week, like how critical that is. And for me as an Enneagram 2, so I'm a helper, one of the big blind spots for us is our pride. And this is where I think I get really stuck in this, what we're talking about here, this inability to take responsibility for some things or see my part in some things. You call it self-righteousness. You're like, Shelley, you're being self-righteous right now. And I totally am like aware of that. I can be that way. And it's so much easier for me to blame other people or see how they're not doing what I believe they should be doing than it is for me to see my part in the dynamic. Yeah. And I think if we stay in that place, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of why we can't move forward, because I didn't do anything. Like I'm the victim here. And so I think this radical responsibility, the self-confrontation, is a really important part in the first step of owning your life and like really being able to bounce forward from things.
Yeah, I like that.
Whether it happened to you or you were a part of it, I do think there's a radical responsibility we have to take for not only in what our part was, but in how we respond to it.
Right. Like our son, bringing home an A on his biology test, but he hasn't turned in half of his homework assignments. And you're kind of forgetting about that. Overly optimistic about the one thing, but
yes, happens.
Different ways to take responsibility in the whole picture there. Number 2.
I want to say hi to Rana Renee real quick. She's watching us.
Oh, right. Great.
Hey there. Hey, friend.
Hey, Rana Renee. Set unreasonable standards. Do that, and you will remain stuck in failure. Yes, you can actually sabotage your chances at succeeding by setting these unreachable deadlines. You know why? Because you're so awesome, right? You're awesome, and you can do a lot of things, and you want to do amazing and awesome things. But you know what that is a recipe for? It's a recipe for just not being. They call them deadlines because you're dead when you get to that finish line. Let's right here and now, let's start calling them lifelines. Do the Tim Ferriss thing. Work smarter and less, and actually get more things done. This is a message that we're thinking we need to be thinking ourselves right now.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, like what Martha Beck kind of calls it in Finding Your Way in a Wild New World, she talks a lot about forming your way into the things and experiences you want, not forcing your way.
I would like to do a poll for everybody watching.
Ooh.
How many perfectionists do we have out there? And how many procrastinators do we have out there? And I would,
or is it both? Is there a both?
Well, I would think that those are one and the same for many of us. I just had a conversation with Chris Collins, who is a fellow Big Selfer with us, and we were talking about this, and this isn't new information. We've all heard that a lot of perfectionists procrastinate, and so we do have these kind of unattainable expectations and standards, and so. If you're trying to push through something or pull through something and bounce back, when we set ourselves up that way, it's really even hard to get out of the gate. And I told you when I was a kid, I would clean my room and I would have really, I wanted to really straighten up everything. So I would take everything out of the drawers, like the sock drawer, the underwear drawer, the shoes are all out of the closet, and I would sit there. And I would just literally sit down in the middle of the room and was almost like turtled up because I was so overwhelmed. It's like that is like an unrealistic standard that and I do this in every area of my life. Like I have these very high standards that I don't even let myself kind of move. I did that with this business.
Yeah. That's what I'm like, there's so much that we know how to do, and we know how to do them, and we think just like a construction what we thought was a weekend project becomes a multi-week project. It's a whole spirit is willing, flesh is weak type of thing. Sometimes it is hard to recognize that some things just will take longer than you want them to, and that's why it's kind of hard, because there's a lot of different things you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, when you even have the vision for what could be next or what I can kind of bounce back from or what that could look like. I think if we load ourselves with standards, if we carry the weight of that, it's really hard to keep to move forward and take action in that process. And I found myself like in my whole kind of bouncing forward year of resetting and reorganizing my life after failure, I found myself hiding, like literally hiding in our house on Signal Mountain because I couldn't figure out how to like really move forward in any kind of like authentic, congruent way. So I think that's what this step is really talking about, is like lower your expectations, lower those standards. You will be so much happier. It will give you the momentum and the action to take a step forward.
You'll have fewer health problems. You'll probably sleep better, and you'll probably be generally more pleasant to be around. So, hey, let's all just do a little bit less, right?
Yeah.
Number 3, Shelly, what's the number 3 thing to do if you want to just stay stuck?
Label yourself a failure or a loser.
Yeah. Yeah. Labels are for like cans and jars, not for you. Right. So
this one's hard. I'm going to say though, man, because I maybe I'm overthinking it, but I've said this before when I was working through failure with my therapist, and she was really trying to help me not take on the identity of a failure or a loser.
Yeah.
And, I really needed to for a minute. Like I really needed to, maybe it was kind of the pride in me was getting broken open.
Yeah.
And there was some humility that was starting to bubble from that. But I needed to feel humbled. I needed to feel like I failed. Not that I'm a failure,
right?
But I failed.
And I think that's the key here, is to think of failure as an experience you've had, but it does not define you. And it's a mindset thing. And I think it's a way to keep that inner critic from really judging. It can kind of, it's maybe you can arrive at this through a bit of a mindfulness practice where you kind of separate yourself from the failure. You look at it very neutrally. You examine the good things you did and take inventory of the ways that you might have contributed to the burnout, setback, failure, whatever it might be. And if you can just literally find a little calm around that, a little bit more relaxation around the failure, you're going to be able to respond more thoughtfully.
Yeah. And it is about the identity part of this. I think that's important to hear, because I think that it's easy when things suck and they're not going well and we feel like we're just like wave upon wave upon wave getting bowled over. It is easy to feel like that I'm a victim here. There's something about me that's created this. And so it's funny though, because the first thing we said was taking responsibility when you're a part of creating those conditions of failing or falling or whatever has happened. But then there's also, don't get getting too far into over identifying with the failure.
Good point.
That it means something about me. So I think there's a paradox there that is, it's not totally clear. I think we kind of have to move through this process a little bit, but not overly identifying. That's what I wanted to say.
And I think here's another paradox embedded in number 4 way, if you want to stay stuck in setback and not bounce forward, mire yourself in negativity. So here's the paradox, right? Like in number 1, we also said that we can tend to overemphasize the positives that we did and underplay the negative. But, this number 4 here is really important. I have known a lot of like people that are kind of, they're kind of in they're like an Eeyore. If you know Winnie the Pooh, right? Eeyore, it's just negative nanny. And it's
Eeyore
like
condition.
Eeyore
syndrome.
Yeah, stay in that. I like that. If you want to stay stuck there, it's like every obstacle, they immediately, when a new idea comes or a new possibility for moving forward, there's immediately all of the things that come to mind of like how this won't work. No, someone's doing this already, or no, I'll never be able to do it. It takes too long, whatever. And studies show actually that hanging out with positive people does like lift you up. And studies show that optimists scale the success ladder faster and higher than pessimists. So, I guess I would, if there's a practice, go ahead.
Well, I want to just think about this though for a second. Our negative Nelly friends, that serves a beautiful protective function for them, because to especially if you've just endured something painful, like of course you want to stay in the negative. It's very safe there. It's very protective. It's very.
Is that the ego protecting the ego shell?
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, I think it's the brain where it's hardwired to. It's negativity bias and negativity. Kind of we're scanning for threats. We're scanning for what might not go well. So if we've encountered some kind of a setback, then of course there's something really protective about that. And I think there's a place and a time for that. Especially if we're healing from something. But the thing is, we're not meant to live there. So that's what I would say. I think what a lot of people do though is they almost feign optimism. So, because no one likes living in this negative place. Most of us don't. It doesn't feel good. That's not fun. But we jump to this positive place and it's not real. So a lot of positive psychologists talk about realistic optimism.
Ooh.
So let's not be Pollyanna about this.
Yes.
Let's actually look for kind of mental reframes or a way to kind of cognitively shift what we're seeing, but in a realistic way. So, because oftentimes if I go too far to the positive, out of effort, to be happier, that it's fake. I know it's fake, and I know that, and I kind of, my brain is that's stupid. That's not realistic. And so you have to kind of inch your way toward more realistic optimism.
Micro actions.
Yeah.
Maybe just take little steps.
And
forward.
We're going to get to this in a minute, but we're doing a class in a couple weeks on this, and we're going to dive into a little bit more specifically the practice of realistic optimism. So.
Yeah. Well, here's
teaser.
Number 5. I think we may just be getting this underneath the 30-minute wheel. Let's see. Number 5, ignore physical and mental health.
This is huge.
I remember actually when you were starting sort of the Shelley Prevost brand, it was play big without the burnout. And that's kind of been a little bit of a mantra around which we've, formed some of the ideas at Big School. Because, a lot of ambitious people, they consider, stress and burnout just as the price that you have to pay, and even as a badge of honor for all the sacrifice.
Not just startups. A lot of people do it.
Yeah.
The busier I am, that must be the better I am, or the more, more important I am.
Yeah. And if I may, sometimes I can kind of see you trending this way. I'm sorry. Some of these things
true. And we cannot bounce back from something if we are physically or mentally not well. If we are unwell, we just can't. So a lot of what these roots of resiliency that we're going to be teaching and talking about, the first one is health. Take care of yourself, which is why I harp so much on self-care.
Self-care.
And we pay lip service to it. We do. I do. And then I have to really be intentional and disciplined about the practice of self-care, because it is so easy to go off the rails and not take care of ourselves physically and mentally.
Yeah, self-care doesn't mean what the media marketing kind of stuff it tries to sell us. It doesn't mean bubble baths, and
it can, but not only.
No, it means good sleep. It means eating well, right? It means regular
moving your body,
exercise. It means sometimes it's okay to do nothing. It's okay to walk out in nature.
It's boring, actually. Self-care is pretty boring. The way that I think about it.
Routines.
Yeah.
But actually, so we've a couple of messages here. Is we're saying work less. We're saying take time to sleep more. These will contribute to your overall efficacy, your overall ability to bounce forward in a positive way. You'll feel better, right? It definitely is the way to get out of these 5 ways of being stuck.
And in terms of this paradox we just talked about, we can name our failure or our setback and even our part in it potentially without blaming ourselves. And I think that's this distinction, naming what happened, confronting ourselves with my role in that without having to shame myself in the process. Like that's really kind of this art of resilience that we're going to be talking about. Can I talk about the class?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's so I guess that does wrap it up. I mean, it's let's think of these as lifelines. So if I
Not
say
deadlines.
that if I want to write 10 books in 2 months and then I, like spectacularly fail in executing on that, or if you say you want to create 9 courses in, 3 days or something and you don't, like, it's okay, right? Let's set realistic deadlines. And then you might have some time to practice the banjo.
You keep coming back to that banjo.
Oh, I know.
I'll get to it. I promise.
All right.
So we want to leave you with this real quickly. We have a how to bounce forward after a setback class. It's a 2-hour live class.
Is that September 29th?
It's 22nd.
22nd.
From 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time. You can go to bigselfschool.com/classes and get all the information there. We have a fantastic positive psychologist who's going to be teaching that class. I will be there as well. And what we're doing through that is we're guiding you to understand where you kind of get stuck in your setback kind of resetting.
Yeah.
Where do you personally get stuck in that? And then we're going to present and teach and talk about 8 different roots of resiliency is what they're called, and really help you come up with a plan so that if you are in a setback, if you are encountering something, I think a lot of us are right now, or you anticipate that something might be, like you want to learn these skills for the future, then this class is for you, and we would love to have you be a part of it. It's going to be really good.
Like we might talk about 5 things pretty broadly on a podcast like this, but I know that, again, it is easier said than done. And a class like that actually does spend more time on equipping you with some of the how as much as, just the what.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds pretty exciting.
We want to keep it personalized too. And so I think the thing that we're really trying to do well is to make it relevant for your life. So not just kind of broad strokes, but really give you a playbook for how now do I take this out of this class and move it into my life so that if and when you experience a setback, because we all will, we've got the tools in our toolbox to help us.
That is it from us. Check us out at bigselfschool.com if you'd like to learn more about any of the fun and exciting things that we're building with our community. It can be a helpless feeling to look around and see that life doesn't look like you thought it would. And at Big Self School, we don't think you should have to feel that way. So we're trying to help out, check out some of our content, and hopefully we will help you develop some resiliency and get out of whatever setback you may be experiencing right now.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for tuning in.
Here's to bouncing forward.